Hi, everybody. Dr. Carolyn here. I hope you're all staying safe and doing well. I know many of you are in cities where there's some reopening going on, and I hope you're enjoying new freedoms or old freedoms that are new again. So, today I'm going to be talking to you about consistency trumps intensity. Huh? What does that mean? Well, not only can chronic stress that we have in adulthood, which, this pandemic is a perfect example of that. It's probably going to last longer than a few months, so it will become a chronic stressor. But it does have an impact on food and body image issues, but also childhood stressors, as we've talked about so many times on these videos, has a dramatic effect on our ability to deal with our food behaviors, and body dissatisfaction. So we know, you probably remember from previous videos, if you watched them, that toxic stress in childhood, meaning stress that is very difficult to manage, that goes on for a long period of time, and that is not accompanied by some kind of adult support or parental support. So just think a child who's facing an insurmountable stressful event without their parent or caregiver's support. That's called toxic stress, just as a reminder. So toxic stress changes the way the brain works, and it changes the way that your brain reacts to stressful situations, therefore can make you more hyperactive towards stress, more sensitive to stress. So early life stressors can actually even change the expression of certain genes, which we call epigenetics. And I talk about this in my TED Talk. But epigenetics is that change in gene expression. For example, toxic stress in childhood can trigger genes for obesity or eating disorders or addictions, and actually turn those genes on um, when you may not have had those turned on without that toxic stress or without the adverse childhood experiences. So again, early life stresses can change the expression of genes that affect hormones that control eating behaviors, the feeling of fullness, which we call satiety, and also appetite. So when you wonder to yourself, like, well, I'm smart, I'm doing great in my career, I'm a great parent, I'm successful in so many areas of my life, but I cannot be successful in this one area of behaviors around food, then remind yourself that if you did have these early life stressors, that they have control over they change the expression of genes, number one, and number two, they change the hormones that control your appetite, your feeling of fullness, your ability to get pleasure from what you eat, that dopamine reward molecule that is often lower in people who struggle with food addiction, binge eating, emotional eating. So those are all things that have been hardwired, and maybe hardwired in a certain way based on early life stressors. So anyway, early toxic stress causes changes in the brain that can thereby change your eating behaviors in adulthood. In other words, for the long term, not just when you're a child. And that's what's important to know. So first of all, stop blaming yourself. Like, what's wrong with me that I can't fix this problem? What's wrong is that it's a deeper problem than you think it is. It's not about losing weight. It's not about food. It's really about finding that root cause of what changed the gene expression, what changed those eating hormones in the first place. That's what's important. And that's what we talk about all the time in the Anchor program. We have so many people who tried every diet known to man, and they still are not feeling any freedom or even peace around food. So and then they blame themselves. Well, I must be weak. I must not be able to stick to the diet. Well, these traits of being able to be consistent, not having some control over your impulsivity or compulsivity, again, are hardwired into the brain and changed by early life adversity. So, but what also changes has more to do with this notion of consistency. So, consistency, impulsivity, compulsivity can all knock you off your game. If you're not able to manage and yourself and be consistent over the long run, then obviously you are putting yourself on that treadmill, the diet treadmill, over and over and over. You get on, you get to a certain point, you can't keep it going. And then you get off, and then you get sick of that. You get back on the treadmill with another fad diet, and it just keeps going on and on and on. One of my clients said, like a hamster on a wheel. And part of that is the trait of impulsivity that interferes with your ability to be consistent. So consistency, though, can trump intensity and novelty. So part of what drives us to jump off the treadmill is shiny object, a new fad diet, that something more intense. Like, I always talk about CrossFit, like I can't just do kind of regular moderate exercise and be consistent with that. I do my exercise just like I do my dieting, in a very extreme and intense way. So I always have to be having something novel or new, and it always has to be intense. Well, why is that? It's perfectly explainable. Intensity and novelty spike dopamine in the brain. So it causes that spike of dopamine that your brain is longing for, because it's lacking dopamine, doesn't have enough because of those adverse child experiences. So what does this all mean? Well, I hear over and over again how my patients are unable to stick to any kind of program, because they always jump off that program to look for something new or novel or something more intense to get that dopamine spike in the brain. So many of us tend to gravitate towards dramatic or intense new ways of eating or physical activity because we feel pumped up by that new diet or the new way to lose belly fat, one of those. I'm sure you've heard those ads. And by the way, they aren't true. If you don't know already, I'm just going to remind you they aren't true. So if you've experienced toxic stress in childhood, your brain is also likely to crave not just certain types of foods like sweets or salty foods or fatty foods, but it also craves intensity and novelty. So I want to just say that one more time. If you've experienced toxic stress in childhood, your brain is also likely to crave not just certain foods like sweets or fats or salty foods, but also intensity and novelty. You may not feel like you're, you may feel you're not working out hard enough. You're not doing enough. Like, the only way that I get results is if I work out 2 hours a day. And so if I can't work out 2 hours a day, I'm not going to do anything. But I just want to tell you that from both my experience in working with hundreds of patients and also my personal experience, doing that moderate exercise on a regular basis trumps those intense periods of, doing CrossFit 2 hours a day or whatever else you've tried. So because, it's really important to have success, and success really depends on your ability to learn to what we call to learn to be a normie. And if you've never gone to a 12-step meeting, you may not know what a normie is, but 12-step groups like AA, Overeaters Anonymous, etc., have a term called normie, which refers to people without an addiction or an eating disorder. Because of changes in the brain that usually happen from childhood adversity, if you have an addiction or you have issues with food or body image, you tend to have that dopamine deficit in the brain. And therefore, you may always be craving that next high. Sometimes you get the high from being in a new relationship, and we call that love addiction. Or sometimes you get it from, intense physical activity or eating certain foods or starting on a new fad diet. But this high can come from drugs, from binging on sugar, doing something exciting, #risky, or pushing yourself in physical activities. If you're not a normie, you may not realize that life really is full of ups and downs. It's normal in life to have periods of time where things are just boring and quiet, and then periods where things are exciting, and other periods where they're moderately interesting or exciting. So life is full of ups and downs. And part of recovery is learning that moderate activity that is consistent can improve your health and well-being. Changing your eating habits and sticking with that consistently. And I don't mean sticking with an extreme fad diet. I mean moderate changes in your eating habits that you stick with consistently over time is much more effective than these grand gestures of, fad dieting. You may not know that consistent, moderate activity and behaviors is also healthier than going on intense activity regimens or intense fad diets that cannot be sustained. So again, consistency trumps intensity and novelty. Consistency trumps intensity and novelty. So instead of not doing anything because you can't do something that gives you that emotional or physical high, think about taking small steps, learning consistency instead. It'll definitely seem weird and it may be boring at first, but over time, your results will outshine your need for always having to do that intense and novel extreme next thing. I hope this has been helpful. If you are exhausted of having to live life in the extremes, please think about, going to my website and scheduling a free consult with me, and I can give you some pretty expert advice about your own individual food and body image issues. The anchor site is below in the content section. It's anchorprogram.com. And just remember, this is what we're talking about today is what the real work of recovery from food and body image issues is all about. So I hope you'll join me in learning consistency. We all have a little extra time right now. Maybe now's the time to put that into place, that practice of consistency. Just a reminder, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and turn on your notification icon, and that way you can be notified immediately to upload a new video. I look forward to talking with you again soon. Signing off, Dr. Carolyn. Bye.